Nike's journey from startup to powerhouse. Nike's rise from a small startup to a $190 billion empire is one of the most inspiring business stories ever told. It all began with a young man named Phil Knight, who started with little more than a vision and a passion for running. Early years, the dream begins. Phil Knight was born in 1938 in Portland, Oregon. He grew up in a strict household, with his father, a newspaper publisher, emphasizing hard work and discipline. Phil wasn't the fastest or the strongest athlete, but he had a love for running. For Phil, running wasn't just about competition. It was about feeling free and alive. Little did he know that this passion for running would set him on a path that would change the world. Phil attended the University of Oregon, where he became a star runner. There he met Bill Bowerman, a legendary track coach who was determined to help athletes run faster by designing better shoes. Bowerman started experimenting with different materials and shoe designs, and Phil became his primary test subject. This experimentation sparked an idea in Phil's mind. What if I could create the best running shoes in the world? Phil knew that running shoes were essential for athletes, but could be improved. He imagined shoes that were light, fast, and comfortable, something that didn't exist yet. This was the seed that would grow into what we now know as Nike. After graduating in 1959, Phil was uncertain about his future. He had a business degree, but no job, no clear direction, and no money. His father suggested he take a real job at a newspaper, but Phil wanted more. He wanted to chase his dream. So he decided to travel the world, which included stops in places like Hawaii, Japan, and Greece. It was in Japan that Phil came across a company called Onitsuka Tiger, which was making lightweight, high-quality shoes. Phil had an idea. What if he could bring these shoes to America and sell them? But there was a big problem. He had no money, no business experience, and no guarantee of success. So he took a huge risk. Phil created a fake business and called it Blue Ribbon Sports. He set up a meeting with Onitsuka Tiger, pretending to be the owner of this non-existent company. To his surprise, Onitsuka agreed to let him sell their shoes in the U.S. This was Phil's first big break. With only $50 in hand, he placed his first order and began selling the shoes from the trunk of his car at track meets. No office, no store, just passion and determination. As Blue Ribbon Sports grew, Phil faced a huge challenge: cash flow. He needed money to buy inventory, but he had no savings and no investors. Every time he sold shoes, he had to reinvest the money to keep the business alive. Onitsuka Tiger required payment up front for each order, leaving Phil constantly on the edge of financial ruin. He needed a loan, but when he went to the bank to ask for help, the bank manager was skeptical. Who would want to buy shoes from Japan? The banker asked. Despite all the rejections, Phil believed in his vision. His belief in his product and his relentless drive kept him going. Eventually, after weeks of rejections, one small bank agreed to give him a loan. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep Blue Ribbon Sports alive. Phil knew he couldn't do everything by himself: selling shoes, managing inventory, handling finances. So he hired his first employee, Jeff Johnson. Jeff was not just any employee. He shared Phil's passion for running and shoes. Jeff worked day and night, helping Phil sell shoes. Together, they opened their first official store in Santa Monica, California, and the business began to grow. But just when things seemed to be turning around, disaster struck. Phil received a call from Japan. Onitsuka Tiger wanted to end their partnership with Blue Ribbon Sports. Phil was devastated. He had been selling thousands of their shoes, and the business was booming. But Onitsuka had secretly been looking for a new distributor and wanted to cut Phil out. If Onitsuka followed through with their plan, everything Phil had worked for would be destroyed. Phil had two choices: give up or fight back and start his own brand. He chose to fight, the birth of Nike. Phil made a bold decision. He would create his own shoe company. But there were huge problems. He had no factory, no manufacturer, and very little money. But he didn't back down. He gathered his small team and said, "We're going to create our own shoes." The team needed a name for the company. They brainstormed for weeks, considering names like Dimension 6 and Falcon, but nothing felt right. Then one night, Jeff Johnson had a dream. In his dream, he saw the Greek goddess of victory, Nike. Jeff woke up and immediately told Phil, and just like that, Nike was born. But a name wasn't enough. They needed a logo. Phil went to a young graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson and asked her to create a logo. She designed the swoosh, a simple curved check mark symbolizing speed, movement, and victory. And how much did Carolyn charge for that iconic logo? Just $35. Now they had the name, the logo, and the drive, but they still didn't have shoes. Phil turned to Bill Bowerman, his old track coach, who had always obsessed over making better running shoes. One morning, as Bowerman was making breakfast, he looked at his waffle iron and a light bulb went off. What if the bottom of a shoe had the same pattern as a waffle? He thought. He poured rubber into the waffle iron and created the first Nike sole. This was the breakthrough Phil and his team needed. They had a shoe that was lighter, faster, and had better grip than anything else on the market. The first Nike shoe, the Nike Waffle Trainer, was born. Despite having the new shoes, Nike was still struggling financially. Phil had spent every last dollar developing the new shoe and breaking away from Onitsuka. To grow Nike, he needed more money. Money for factories, marketing, and materials. And once again, he had to beg for loans. Phil went to the banks once again, showing them his new shoes and explaining his vision. But the banks laughed at him. "You want us to invest in a small shoe company competing against Adidas and Puma? Are you crazy?" they asked. Finally, after more rejection, one small bank agreed to give Phil a loan, but the terms were tough. A high interest rate, and Phil had to personally guarantee the loan. That meant if Nike failed, Phil would lose everything: his house, his savings, and his future. But Phil had no choice. Failure wasn't an option. As if things weren't tough enough, Onitsuka Tiger sued Nike for stealing their shoe designs. If Nike lost the lawsuit, they would have to shut down and pay millions of dollars in damages. Phil was devastated. It seemed like everything he had worked for was at risk. But then, something unexpected happened. The court discovered that Onitsuka had been planning to betray Phil from the beginning. Nike won the lawsuit, and the court ruled in their favor. The legal battle was over, and Phil was free to move forward. But Nike still had a lot of work ahead. Now that they had won the legal battle, Nike had to build a real brand. They didn't have the big marketing budgets that the bigger companies had, so they got creative. Instead of spending money on traditional advertisements, they decided to go directly to athletes. They gave athletes free Nike shoes and asked them to wear them in competitions. Soon, athletes from all sports began wearing Nike shoes. Word spread, and more athletes started buying Nike gear. Nike was still a small company, but it was gaining momentum. Nike needed a breakthrough product, something that would make people take notice. Bill Bowerman came through once again with the Nike Cortez. The Cortez wasn't just another running shoe. It was stylish, lightweight, and had the best cushioning ever seen. The timing couldn't have been better, as the 1972 Olympics were coming up, and Nike made sure their shoes were everywhere. Nike shoes were worn by athletes at the Olympics, setting records and making history. The world was watching, and Nike was becoming a global brand. By the late 1970s, Nike was growing fast, but it was still behind Adidas. To truly break into the mainstream, they needed something big. That's when they made one of the boldest moves in sports marketing history. They signed Michael Jordan, a rookie basketball player who was not yet a superstar. At the time, Jordan's dream brand was Adidas, and they didn't even want to meet with Nike. But Nike refused to give up. They went to Michael's mother, Dolores Jordan, who convinced her son to meet with Nike. Nike made a huge offer, and in 1984, Michael Jordan signed with Nike. They created a shoe just for him, the Air Jordan 1. At first, the NBA banned the Air Jordan 1 because of its bright colors, but that only made the shoes more popular. Jordan went on to dominate the NBA, and Air Jordans became a cultural phenomenon. Sales skyrocketed, and Nike went from a growing company to a multi-billion-dollar empire. By the 1990s, Nike wasn't just a shoe company. It was a global sports empire. Athletes like Michael Jordan, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Serena Williams wore Nike gear, and the brand became synonymous with greatness. Nike expanded across the globe, signing sponsorships with football clubs like Barcelona and PSG, and dominating markets in Asia, Europe, and South America. In 1988, Nike launched its iconic Just Do It campaign, which helped them connect not just with athletes, but with regular people too. It became a slogan that inspired millions of people to push past their limits. Just Do It wasn't just about selling shoes. It was about selling a mindset, a mentality of perseverance and determination. By 2003, Nike's revenue hit $10 billion. Today, Nike is worth over $190 billion and continues to dominate the sports industry. The company's success is a testament to Phil Knight's perseverance, vision, and belief in his dream. This story of Nike is more than just about shoes. It's about never giving up, even when the odds are stacked against you. It's about believing in your vision, even when no one else does. Phil Knight had no money, no support, and no guarantees. But he had a dream, and that dream built an empire.